Now, by keeping them on one needle, you're in complete control of everything that's happening on that part of your sock, and it's also going to help you to shape the gusset in exactly the right place at the join of those two needles. We've joined one side of the heel, we've got the instep, so now we need to join this side of the heel, and we're going to do that on the third needle. So we're going to go upwards, but using the same technique that we did before by picking up and making a stitch in those loops. So we put the needle through, pull the yarn through, and again make sure that's quite tight because that's a join. Okay, so we've got some stitches on this needle that we've picked up, the stitches we've picked up on this needle and the stitches that we did for the heel. So to make it even and able to work, we're going to put half of the stitches from the heel onto the third needle by knitting them over. You now have perfectly distributed number of stitches on those two needles and all of your instep stitches on the third needle. And so now you're ready to make the shaping to get the gusset shape that is along the side of the sock. So we're going to knit all the stitches on needle 1 until we get to the last 3 stitches. We're going to go to the last 3 stitches, we're going to knit them together, knit 2 together and knit the last one. So we've completed needle 1. Then we're going to knit all the stitches on needle 2 with no decreases and no shaping. And needle 3, the shaping starts at the beginning of this needle, which is at the join. So for this one, we're going to knit the first one, and then we're going to do a slip 1, knit 1, pass slip stitch over, decrease, which is exactly the same as when we were turning the heel, and then knit the remaining stitches. So we do one round with shaping, and then we do one round with no shaping, so we just knit all of the stitches. And of course on needle 2 we would do our pattern if we had a pattern, and then we'll continue to do alternate rows of shaping and no shaping until needles 1 and 3 have between them exactly the same number of stitches as there are on needle 2. You can already see my little triangle starting to form here, just in 3 rows. You'll end up with the completed gusset shape. You can see a definite sloping. You've got your instep with a pattern, and now we're on the long haul to the toe. And you just continue to knit rounds and rounds and rounds until we start to shape the toe. So here we've got another sock that's very, very nearly finished. You can see the foot and the length is almost identical. In your knitting pattern, it will tell you when you get to this point in your knitting how to shape the toe. And I've just started to shape this toe. It's not going to be as easy to see because it's black, but you can just start to see where I started to decrease in exactly the same way that we did the shaping the heel, turning the heel, and when we did shaping the gusset. It's just knit 2 together decreases on one side, and slip 1, knit 1, pass 1 over, decreases on the other side. With knitting, we use a technique called grafting, which allows you to join the stitches without leaving a seam. And if you can imagine for socks why that would be really comfortable, I'll show you on one here that's finished what it actually looks like. There's absolutely no join, it looks like it's a continuous piece of knitting, and there's no uncomfortable seam to rub your toes on, and if you're a walker that would be perfect for your socks. I've got a very small sample just to show you the technique. Imagine that was the toe of your sock. You've done all the shaping and you've got a small number of stitches left, because that is what you will end up with, about 10 stitches on each needle. And then you will end up with about 20 stitches. You share them in exactly half, so that you've got 2 needles and half the stitches on one and half the stitches on the other. And you need your yarn from your final stitch on the needle that's at the back. You will cut your yarn from your ball of wool, leaving enough yarn to do the grafting. I've got far too much here, I'll just cut a little piece off. So you thread a yarn needle and you do a preparing stitch first, and then you start the grafting. So you take the yarn needle and you put it in the first stitch as though you were doing a purl stitch, and leave the stitch on the needle. Then you go to the back one and you keep the needle underneath the needles and put the yarn needle in the stitch as though you were going to knit with this needle, and pull that through. Okay, and that's just to prepare, and now we start grafting. So we put the needle in the first one as though we're going to knit, but we have to take the stitch off the needle. Then we put it in the second one as though we're going to purl, and we leave it on the needle. Then we go to the back one and put it in as though we're going to purl, and slide the stitch off, and then we put it in the next stitch as though we're going to knit, and we leave the stitch on. So in a knit direction and take it off, in a purl direction and leave it on, in a purl direction and take it off, in a knit direction and leave it on. And it is good to say it as you're doing it, because it's easy to get distracted and forget what you are doing. You can see where it's joined them and there's no seam, just like magic, and it looks like you've managed to knit over the edge.
That's lovely.
Perfect.